Hello, this is Dr. Patricia Fox, and I'm going to be reviewing the Cooperative Agreement Guide training for the Avian Health section. Not much has changed this year. The Cooperative Agreement Guide is very similar to what you've seen in the last couple of years, but I'll just go through a couple of reminders to keep the back and forth with the different versions down to a minimum. In the first section, what we really want to look at is surveillance. We want active surveillance, where you're going out and you're getting samples, and we also want passive surveillance. A reminder that passive surveillance, and that is very often those necropsies that come into your lab for sick bird calls and things like that, are a requirement for NPIP participation, and also to make sure that your state gets indemnity if your birds happen to come down with either low pass or high pass AI. It is required that the state have a surveillance program that includes passive surveillance. So we have put a note in the guide this year to remind you that if you do not have necropsies or sick bird calls indicated in your cooperative agreement guide, that you need to put down some reason why that is not occurring, or the fact that it's just not covered by cooperative agreement funding, but it is in fact being done by the state. So that's one reminder about passive surveillance. Also, we want to make sure that your sample goals are indicated on the chart. You can put them in the body of the work plan if you like, but we find it much easier if you fill out the spreadsheet that's available in Appendix D8, and then we can match that up and also compare it with what you've done the last couple of years. A reminder on that is if your sample goals have significantly changed in number from last year or the previous years to this year, we would like for you to explain why. And in some cases, that may just be that you're changing from serology to antigen detection, and now you're pooling samples, so your sample sizes are lower, but the bird numbers are the same, or it could be that you've gained or lost large commercial flocks in your state. But if there's a significant difference, and I would say significant would be over 10% or so from the last few years, to let us know why your sample goals have changed. Other things that you might have in this section would be biosecurity enforcement, and some states are starting the auditing process for NPIP, or going out and at least doing education and outreach on auditing, so that can be included here in your personnel hours. Record keeping, keeping track of imports and exports, things like that. So all of those activities are certainly allowable within the Cooperative Agreement Guide. Just make sure that you include enough relevant information in the work plan so that we can justify and support those activities. So we prefer if you don't just put personnel, 500 hours. Let us know what that personnel, what they're doing, and how they're supporting the program, even if it's just very briefly. The next section is diagnostic testing, and as in the past, you need to list your cost per test, the test type, and what laboratory or laboratories are being used. The numbers here should match those surveillance goals that you included on the Excel spreadsheet or in the body of the work plan that we just talked about, your active and passive surveillance. A reminder here that antigen capture immunoassay testing, ACIA, the laboratories cannot be reimbursed for this test. That is a pen-side test that does not require laboratory personnel, so we don't reimburse folks for doing that. But the kits can be purchased for the use in the field and should be listed under supplies and not under diagnostic testing. So that hasn't changed, but just a quick reminder because people sometimes want to put the kits under diagnostic testing and they need to go under supplies. One thing that is under diagnostic testing, because it's a direct laboratory benefit, is any travel to attend NPIP official laboratory training. That's the only laboratory training that we can support here, but it's the NPIP official laboratory training that they do for Salmonella, Mycoplasma, avian influenza, all of those. So the training cost can be here under the diagnostic testing section. The next two sections, education and outreach and emergency management. You may or may not have specific avian health goals listed here. Very often education and outreach is done more globally for all animal diseases, and same with emergency management. But if there's a significant amount of avian health funding that is spent either under education or outreach or biosecurity, we need some specifics as to what's actually going on. So for education and outreach, if you're having courses, if you're doing outreach to backyard producers, things like that, just make sure you put some specifics if there's a significant amount of funding that's being used under that line item. A reminder here is that any pamphlet, calendar, educational material that is funded with cooperative agreement funds has got to be approved by LPA, and you need to allow 2 weeks for that to happen. So do not send things to the printer or plan for them to be printed until you've gotten that approval back from us. It's usually pretty quick, but we want to make sure we allow 2 weeks to make sure that it is approved. The other thing that we want to mention here is, again, we still can't do any of those promotional items like squishy toys or magnets or things of that nature. It has got to be education and outreach, and calendar. Those are still approvable because they have a lot of information in them, but when you get too far away from anything printed like that, we get into some issues. So there was a few things last year that we had to, that we could not approve because it was considered a promotional item. So if you're not sure, please check first. The last thing we want to make sure that everybody knows is that in the quarterly reports, there is a Excel spreadsheet, and the specific format for 2018 that is attached to the guide must be used. It is different from the 2017 reporting format, and it cannot be altered. You need to just enter the information in there, and you need to submit it as an Excel file. We can't take it as a PDF, and we can't use it if it's altered, so please don't change any of the unlocked fields. All of those quarterly reports are actually merged and put into a national report, and that doesn't work if it's not in the Excel format, in the unaltered format. So please make sure that you submit your testing numbers, your surveillance data on that 2018 Excel spreadsheet that's in Appendix C. Narrative of other goals are in there is still required, but it can either be on a separate sheet of paper or on the bottom of that reporting template. That's okay. They can pull that part off before they do the merge. But you do still need to keep track of the other objectives and goals that you had in your work plan, and not just turn in an Excel spreadsheet and call it a day. As usual, if you have any questions or comments, you can always get in touch with me, and my email address is below. Thank you very much.